The air was thick with fear as the alien warship cruised silently above the Earth. Below, the planet's cities lay in ruins, their once vibrant streets now haunted by the echoes of war. The war had been swift, brutal, and without mercy. The alien invaders, known as the Zixians, had come from a distant star system, their advanced technology and ruthlessness overwhelming humanity's defenses. The Earth's armies had fought valiantly, but the aliens' superior weaponry and tactics had proven too much. Within weeks, the war was over, and the last remnants of humanity were rounded up and forced into captivity. The Zixians had one goal: to strip the planet of its resources and enslave the surviving humans to work in their colonies. The idea of humans rising against them, of standing up to their might, was laughable to the Zixians. They had conquered dozens of worlds, subjugating countless species with ease. Earth was just another stop on their path to galactic dominance. The captives, however, had not given up hope. They were confined to large holding pens, surrounded by electrified barriers and guarded by hulking alien enforcers. The humans were treated with disdain, their spirits crushed by months of abuse, starvation, and harsh conditions. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, something deep inside them refused to break. Their will to survive, to fight for their planet and their people, was stronger than the alien invaders had anticipated. Among the prisoners, there was a leader who had emerged from the chaos. His name was John Heller, a former military strategist who had seen the rise and fall of humanity's last stand against the Zixians. He had witnessed the fall of his city, the death of his comrades, and the moment of surrender when they had been rounded up like cattle. But something had changed within him. His time in captivity had allowed him to observe the aliens, their technology, and their behavior. He learned their weaknesses, and in that knowledge, he found a way to turn the tide. The Zixians had made a crucial mistake: they had underestimated the human spirit. They thought that breaking the bodies of the people they had enslaved would crush their resolve, but what they didn't understand was that even in their darkest moments, humans could adapt and evolve. They could fight back, not just with brute strength, but with ingenuity, unity, and resilience. John Heller had spent weeks quietly rallying the other prisoners. He knew the only way they could possibly survive was by outsmarting their captors. The aliens were ruthless, but they were not invincible. Heller had noticed that the Zixians relied heavily on their technology, particularly their energy shields and weapons. But there were flaws. Their weapons were powerful, but they had limits, and their shields, though nearly impenetrable to conventional attacks, could be overloaded if pushed to their maximum capacity. And the Zixians were overconfident. They didn't believe the humans had any fight left in them, which gave them an opening. As the days passed, Heller's plan began to take shape. He made alliances with the other captives, men and women from all walks of life, each with their unique skills. There was Maria, a brilliant engineer who had worked on cutting-edge robotics before the war. There was Alex, a former hacker who had once infiltrated government systems. There was Sarah, a medic with a keen understanding of alien biology, and Jason, a former soldier who knew how to handle weapons. Together, they formed a resistance, hidden in plain sight, within the very walls of the Zixian camp. They communicated in secret, using subtle signs and gestures to avoid drawing the attention of their alien overseers. Heller's leadership was key. He had always been able to read the battlefield, to anticipate his enemy's moves. Now, he used those same skills to navigate the political landscape within the camp. The Zixians were not just soldiers, they were a military caste, with their own internal hierarchies, divisions, and power struggles. Heller exploited those weaknesses, using disinformation and deception to create divisions among the alien guards. One of the key moments came when a Zixian captain, Crag, began to grow suspicious of the prisoners. Crag was a ruthless leader, known for his brutal methods and cunning intellect. He had noticed that the humans were starting to act differently, their movements more deliberate, their conversations more focused. He began to tighten security, hoping to root out any rebellion before it could take hold. But this only played into Heller's hands. Crag's actions made the humans more cautious, but they also created opportunities. Maria had managed to sabotage a few of the Zixians' energy shields, causing them to flicker intermittently. Alex used his hacking skills to tap into the camp's communication network, subtly planting false messages that led the Zixians to believe there was an internal conflict among their ranks. Meanwhile, Sarah had found a way to synthesize a toxin that could incapacitate the alien guards temporarily. They had a plan, and it was ready to be set into motion. The night of the revolt came without warning. The Zixians had been lulled into a false sense of security, their arrogance blinding them to the humans' growing resolve. As the camp settled into its usual routine, Heller gave the signal. Maria triggered a series of explosions that disabled the energy shields around the prisoners' cells, allowing them to break free. Alex flooded the communication network with disinformation, sending false orders that created chaos among the alien ranks. Jason and the others armed themselves with makeshift weapons, shivs, broken pipes, and stolen Zixian tech. The battle was fierce. The Zixian guards, unprepared for a coordinated uprising, were quickly overwhelmed. Sarah's toxin incapacitated many of the aliens, leaving them vulnerable to the humans' attacks. Heller led the charge, his tactical mind guiding the prisoners through the chaos. They fought with a ferocity that the aliens had never expected. They fought not just for their survival, but for their home, their families, and their future. In the midst of the battle, Crag arrived, furious at the betrayal of his forces. He was a towering figure, clad in battle armor, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light. He fought his way through the human resistance, determined to crush the uprising before it could spread. But Heller was ready for him. Using the knowledge he had gained during his time in captivity, Heller devised a trap. He lured Crag into a narrow corridor where the alien's superior strength and speed would be useless. With a combination of tactics, teamwork, and a little bit of luck, they managed to disable Crag's armor, leaving him vulnerable. In a final, desperate move, Heller struck, killing the Zixian captain and sending shockwaves through the remaining invaders. But the victory came at a cost. The humans had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The Zixians were not a species to be defeated easily. They would retaliate, and they would come back stronger. But the humans had sent a clear message: they would not be enslaved. They would not surrender. And they would fight, to the very last man or woman, to reclaim their world. The tables had been turned. The aliens had thought that they could break the humans, but instead, the humans had broken them. The first spark of rebellion had ignited, and with it came the hope that Earth could one day be free again. But the struggle was only beginning. The fight for survival, for freedom, for humanity's place in the galaxy, was just starting. And as the remaining humans regrouped, forming their resistance, preparing for the battles to come, one thing was certain: they would never surrender again. The Zixians had awakened something deep within the heart of humankind, a will to survive, a fire that could never be extinguished. The war was not over. It had only just begun. As the fire of rebellion continued to burn brightly within the survivors, the landscape of the Zixian occupation camp was unrecognizable. What had once been a place of torment and despair had now become a symbol of humanity's resistance. In the aftermath of their first victory, the humans were no longer just scattered prisoners. They were fighters, united under a banner of defiance. Heller stood at the center of the camp, overseeing the wounded, organizing the makeshift triage stations, and coordinating plans for the next steps. Maria was already working on reinforcing their defenses, using the scraps of alien technology they had salvaged to build rudimentary weapons. Alex had begun to hack into more of the Zixians' communication systems, eager to turn their own technology against them. Sarah moved through the wounded with a focused determination, her hand steady as she administered care. Even Jason, who had once been a soldier fighting for his life, now found himself taking on the mantle of a trainer, teaching the others how to fight, how to survive. But the threat was far from over. As dawn broke over the ruined camp, a cold realization began to settle among the humans. The Zixians would not let this stand. They would not allow their conquest to be disrupted so easily. The first sign of the inevitable retaliation came hours after the battle. A deep rumble shook the ground beneath their feet, followed by the telltale thrum of approaching Zixian warships. The humans had gained a victory, but it had come at the price of alerting the invaders to the strength of their resistance. The war was far from over. If anything, the Zixians would now consider this rebellion a direct challenge to their authority, a challenge they would destroy before it could spread. Heller knew they had only a small window of time to prepare for what was to come. "We've drawn their attention," he muttered to his team, his voice grim. "And they won't rest until we're all dead or back in chains." "We can't run," Maria replied, her hands covered in grease from repairing a weapon. "We won't survive long enough to escape, not with what they have coming for us." "Then we fight," Heller said, his tone unwavering. "This place is our stronghold now. We use it to our advantage. We strike before they can strike back." In the days that followed, the resistance fortified their position. They built traps around the camp, using the terrain to their advantage, digging hidden pits and laying explosive charges to slow the Zixian advance. Maria worked tirelessly to reverse engineer alien weapons, turning them into improvised explosives and traps. Alex's knowledge of hacking became a valuable asset as he infiltrated the Zixian networks to gather intelligence, disrupt their communications, and learn more about their planned retaliation. The Zixians, however, were far from a simple enemy. Their technology was far superior to anything the humans had, and they had already begun massing reinforcements. The moment they received word of the failed occupation, they had dispatched a full battalion of soldiers, along with heavy artillery and their deadly war machines. These were not the alien foot soldiers that had been defeated, these were the Zixian elite, a ruthless and merciless force trained specifically to wipe out rebellions like the one the humans had started. The Zixian response was swift. An advanced battle cruiser, a massive vessel the size of a city block, appeared in the sky, its dark silhouette casting a shadow over the camp. From it descended a legion of armored soldiers, their sleek suits glowing with energy. The ground shook with the arrival of their war machines, gigantic, towering robots designed to crush anything in their path. The Zixians had come prepared, and this time, they would not underestimate the humans. Heller watched the scene unfold from a vantage point atop a small hill, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the approaching invaders. He knew this was the decisive moment. They could not afford to lose. If they did, it would not just be their lives at stake, it would be the future of Earth itself. "Ready your stations," Heller ordered. "No matter how powerful their machines are, no matter how many soldiers they send, they are not invincible. This is our home, and we will defend it with everything we have." The humans took their positions, hidden in the hills, behind rocks, and inside camouflaged bunkers. They had learned from their first battle, and they knew that they couldn't afford to play the Zixians' game. They needed to hit hard, fast, and catch them off guard once more. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was the spark that would ignite a larger rebellion across the planet. The Zixians began to advance toward the camp, unaware of the traps laid in their path. As they neared, the humans activated their first line of defenses. A series of explosions rocked the ground, sending waves of dirt and debris into the air, momentarily blinding the advancing alien forces. The Zixians stumbled, their sensors scrambling to recalibrate as the humans unleashed a barrage of fire from hidden positions. The resistance used their newfound alien weapons to devastating effect, targeting weak points in the Zixian machine's armor. For a moment, it seemed like the humans might actually win this fight. The Zixians were caught off guard, disoriented by the sudden attack. But the advantage didn't last long. The aliens quickly regrouped, their battle tactics kicking in as they activated their shields and returned fire with deadly precision. Heavy blasts from their war machines tore through the human defenses, and the resistance was forced to retreat into the deeper parts of the camp. "Fall back," Heller shouted. "Get to the secondary positions." As the humans fell back, the Zixians pressed forward, relentless in their assault. The sound of explosions filled the air, the ground trembling beneath their feet. The humans were holding their ground, but for how long? The Zixians were methodical, calculating, and patient, traits the humans couldn't afford to match in this fight. But John Heller, in the midst of the chaos, saw something that made his heart race with a renewed sense of purpose. In the distance, he could see a weakness in the Zixian formation. The war machines were powerful, but they were slow, and their troops were overly concentrated in certain areas. The Zixians had not anticipated a sustained guerrilla war, where the humans used the terrain to their advantage. It was then that Heller made a decision. "We need to target their command center," he said, turning to Maria and Alex. "We break their leadership, and their army will crumble." Maria nodded, her face set with determination. "We've got the explosives ready. We'll need a distraction." Alex grinned, his fingers already working at the console in front of him. "Leave the distraction to me. I'll overload their communications. Give us a window to hit them." The humans moved quickly, rallying behind Heller's plan. As Alex worked to hack into the Zixian systems, creating chaos in their ranks, the resistance fighters slipped into the shadows, preparing for their most dangerous move yet, a direct assault on the heart of the alien force. Heller knew that the success of this mission would depend on timing and precision. They had one chance, one shot to strike at the Zixian leadership and take control of the situation. They couldn't afford to fail. And as the first explosion tore through the Zixian command center, Heller's heart pounded with the hope that this would finally be the turning point they so desperately needed. The rebellion had begun, and there was no turning back now. The explosion rocked the Zixian command center, sending a shockwave through the alien forces. The air rippled with the force of the blast, and the ground trembled under the weight of their machines. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze, and eerie silence descended as the Zixians' communications system scrambled, their command structure fractured in an instant. "Now!" Heller shouted, his voice cutting through the confusion. It was a command that sent a ripple through the human fighters, who had been waiting for this moment. They surged forward, emerging from their cover in the hills, their weapons raised, moving with purpose. The Zixian war machines, which had been moving toward the camp, faltered, their systems glitching. The distraction Alex had caused was perfect. Their coordination fell apart. The machines, once methodical and unyielding, became disoriented. Some stalled, unable to process new commands, while others simply veered off course, colliding with their own soldiers in a chaotic tangle of metal and fire. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The human resistance, armed with both their scavenged weapons and a few of the Zixians' own, descended on the disoriented aliens like wolves in a hunt. Heller, leading the charge, was a force of nature. He ducked under a blast of plasma fire, rolled to the side, and emerged behind one of the alien war machines. With precision, he planted an explosive charge at its weak point just beneath its control center. A moment later, the machine erupted in a violent burst, its armored body splitting apart, sending shards of molten metal scattering across the battlefield. Around him, the humans fought with the same ferocity. Maria, who had once only been an engineer, now moved like a seasoned warrior, her hand steady as she planted explosives on Zixian tanks. Jason led a squad to assault the rear of the Zixian infantry, cutting down the remaining soldiers with brutal efficiency. Sarah, who had been tending to the wounded just moments ago, now moved with surprising speed, administering quick shots of tranquilizing agents to alien soldiers, incapacitating them before they could react. Alex's fingers flew over his makeshift console, his eyes darting back and forth as he worked furiously to keep the Zixian communication network in disarray. Every time the aliens tried to regroup, he sent them false commands, diverting reinforcements away from key points and funneling them into ambushes. The Zixians had no idea what hit them. They had anticipated an easy victory, not the storm that had suddenly unleashed upon them. But just as the humans began to feel the weight of their success, the Zixian warlord made his appearance. High above the battlefield, a sleek, black cruiser descended, its engines roaring with unearthly power. It hovered ominously in the sky, its silhouette a symbol of the Zixian might that had decimated entire planets. As the ship landed, the ground beneath it cracked with the force of its landing thrusters. The hatch opened, and from within emerged the towering figure of the warlord, the Zixian Supreme Commander, Commander Thrax. His presence was almost palpable, exuding an air of calm malevolence. He was an imposing figure, clad in black battle armor adorned with strange, alien symbols. His red eyes glowed with an eerie intelligence, and his sharp features were set in an expression of cold, unyielding contempt. Thrax surveyed the battlefield with a calmness that unsettled the humans. He stood as a singular figure of power, radiating authority and control. The chaos unfolding around him seemed almost beneath his notice. He raised a hand, and the Zyxian forces, though clearly in disarray, began to rally under his command. His soldiers reformed, their weapons locking into place, and they advanced again, this time with greater determination. "Foolish creatures," Thrax's voice boomed, amplified through a speaker on his armor. "You think you can defeat us? That this pathetic resistance will be your salvation? Your world is ours. You will never win." But Heller didn't flinch. His eyes locked onto Thrax, his jaw set. "We've already won more than you'll ever understand," he muttered under his breath. Then, louder, to his team, "Push forward. We take that ship. No matter the cost." The human fighters moved with renewed vigor, their morale soaring. They had dealt a heavy blow to the Zyxians, but now they faced their greatest challenge yet, the alien warlord himself. The battle shifted gears as Heller and his team led a daring assault toward Thrax's position. They knew that taking him down would be the key to disrupting the Zyxian command structure, and with the alien forces scattered and disoriented, now was their only chance. Heller led the charge, his mind racing with strategy as he scanned the terrain. The humans fought their way toward Thrax, cutting down the alien soldiers who blocked their path. The Zyxian warlord remained a calm center in the storm, but his soldiers were beginning to crack. His once imposing forces were no longer organized, no longer the unstoppable force they had been at the beginning. The Zyxians had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to fight back. Now they were paying the price. As Heller approached Thrax, he called out to his team, "Take down his guards. I'll handle Thrax." Maria and Jason split off, moving with precision to engage the Zyxian elite guards that surrounded the warlord. Alex, meanwhile, hacked into the Zyxian security systems to disable any remaining automated turrets or backup systems, ensuring their path was clear. Thrax finally moved, his powerful figure darting forward with inhuman speed. He swung his massive energy blade, cutting through the air with a hum of power. The weapon crackled with lethal energy, its edge glowing an intense blue. Heller barely managed to sidestep the strike, feeling the heat of the blade as it passed just inches from his face. He raised his own weapon, a hybrid of Zyxian technology and human ingenuity, and fired it directly at the warlord. The shot struck Thrax's armor, but the damage was minimal. The Zyxian warlord didn't even flinch. Instead, he swung his energy blade down again, this time aimed at Heller's midsection. Heller barely had time to react, using his own weapon to deflect the blow. Sparks flew, and for a moment, the two combatants were locked in a brutal clash, their blades clashing with a violent hiss. Despite the immense strength and skill of Thrax, Heller's determination was unwavering. He fought not just for survival, but for his people, for Earth, for the future of humanity. Every strike he made was a calculated effort to weaken the Zyxian warlord, to find any chink in his armor. As the battle raged on, Maria and Jason fought valiantly to protect Heller from Thrax's elite guards. The air was thick with the sounds of plasma fire, the crackle of energy weapons, and the grunts of effort as humans and Zyxians clashed in a deadly dance of life and death. The humans were outnumbered, but they fought with a fury born from the desperation of having nothing left to lose. And in that moment, as the tide of the battle shifted, it became clear that the humans were not just fighting for their survival. They were fighting to change the course of history. With every breath they took, with every blow they struck, they were showing the Zyxians that they would not be conquered, that they would never surrender. The rebellion had begun, and it was far from over. The war for Earth had just entered its most dangerous phase, and humanity, against all odds, was prepared to see it through to the bitter end. The clash between Heller and Commander Thrax raged on, a brutal dance of power, skill, and desperation. Thrax's energy blade hummed with a deadly resonance, each strike carrying the weight of 1,000 years of conquest. But Heller, fueled by the fire of rebellion and the desperate need to protect his people, matched the alien warlord blow for blow. His weapon, a hybrid of Zixian technology and human ingenuity, was far less advanced, but it had one thing that Thrax's blade could never match: humanity's unyielding will to survive. Heller's hands trembled slightly from the effort, but his eyes were locked on Thrax's, unwavering. There was something deeply unsettling about the warlord's calm. His movements were fluid, almost calculated, as if he were toying with Heller, waiting for him to make a mistake. But Heller wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. He twisted his body, narrowly avoiding another strike, then countered with a swift jab that grazed Thrax's armor. Sparks flew, but the blow did little more than annoy the alien commander. "You're stronger than I anticipated," Thrax's voice echoed, his tone devoid of any real surprise. "But it's all in vain. You're fighting for a dying world." "I'm fighting for the future," Heller retorted, his voice ragged. "For a future that doesn't belong to you." The Zixian warlord's lips curled into a thin, disdainful smile. "The future is mine," Thrax snarled, raising his energy blade high for a killing strike. At that moment, the ground beneath them trembled once again. This time, it wasn't from the war machines or the explosions. The earth was shaking with the force of something much larger. Heller glanced up, his eyes widening in realization. A massive Zixian battleship, its hull a gleaming black, descended from the clouds like an ominous storm, its massive engines roaring as it slowly touched down near the center of the battlefield. The ship was unlike any the humans had seen before. Towering and menacing, it was the heart of the Zixian invasion force, a flagship of unimaginable power. And it had just landed, bringing with it the full force of the Zixian army. "We're out of time," Heller muttered under his breath, his gaze never leaving Thrax. "We can't let them regroup." With a snarl of frustration, Heller launched himself at Thrax once again. The warlord swung his energy blade, but this time Heller was prepared. He dodged the strike, then pressed forward with a flurry of rapid strikes, each one aimed at weakening Thrax's armor. He wasn't trying to defeat him in a single blow, he was trying to create an opening, a crack in the seemingly impenetrable shell of the Zixian commander. Meanwhile, Maria and Jason fought with brutal efficiency against the remaining Zixian soldiers. The humans had learned the art of war quickly, and now they moved with a deadly precision. They knew they had one shot at this. If they could take out Thrax, the morale of the Zixian forces would crumble, and their invasion could be stopped before it reached a boiling point. But the battleship loomed over them, and the Zixian reinforcements were beginning to overwhelm their position. The human fighters were growing more fatigued, their ammo dwindling, and their numbers thinning. Yet despite the growing odds, the spark of defiance in their hearts refused to go out. "Focus!" Heller shouted to his team, his voice hoarse but strong. "Take down Thrax, now! We'll buy you time." Maria and Jason nodded, their expressions fierce. They sprinted toward the warlord's position, but Thrax's elite guards quickly intercepted them. The two humans fought valiantly, pushing forward with everything they had. Meanwhile, Alex, still back at the control station, hacked into the Zixian communications system once more. With a few rapid keystrokes, he overrode the fleet's command protocols, sending false signals to their fleet ordering them to stay on standby, giving the humans precious minutes of breathing room. It was enough. With a growl of frustration, Thrax swung his energy blade in a wide arc, aiming to cut Heller down. The attack was a blur of lethal light, but Heller anticipated it. He ducked low, rolling beneath the blade, and in that instant, he saw his chance. His weapon, a crude but effective fusion of alien tech and human innovation, glowed with energy as he thrust it into a vulnerable joint in Thrax's armor. There was a resounding crack as the blade made contact, and the warlord staggered back. The humans had created a breach. For the first time, Heller saw a flicker of uncertainty in Thrax's eyes. It was the smallest of cracks in his otherwise impenetrable facade, but it was enough. Heller wasn't done yet. He pressed forward, launching a flurry of attacks with every ounce of strength he could muster, each strike calculated, each movement executed with ruthless precision. Thrax snarled, raising his blade to strike again, but he was slower now, his movements more cautious. The damage to his armor was starting to show, small pieces of it crumbling away under the relentless assault. Heller's team had managed to create an opening, and it was all coming down to this one final push. The air around them crackled with tension as Heller and Thrax circled each other. Thrax's red eyes flickered with a momentary flash of frustration, and Heller seized the opportunity. He dove at the warlord's unprotected side, shoving his weapon deep into Thrax's side. The Zixian let out a guttural roar, but it was too late. The damage was done. With a final, defiant gasp, Thrax fell to his knees. His energy blade fell to the ground with a dull thud. His eyes were wide in disbelief, his breath ragged as he crumpled to the ground. Heller stood over him, panting heavily, his face smeared with dirt and blood. The warlord was defeated. "We did it," Heller breathed, his voice filled with both relief and disbelief. But as the humans took a moment to catch their breath, a new threat loomed. The Zixian flagship, now fully deployed, began to shift. Its massive hull unfolded, revealing several smaller craft that were launching in rapid succession, their engines roaring to life as they prepared to enter the battle. "Not over yet," Alex called out from the command station, his voice tight with urgency. "They're not done. The flagship is launching reinforcements." Heller glanced up at the unfolding chaos above him. The Zixian fleet was relentless. The fight for Earth was far from won. But in that moment, the humans knew something they hadn't known before. They had taken down the heart of the invasion. Thrax was gone, and with him, the confidence that had bolstered the Zixian army. The resistance wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to take back their world. And this time, they weren't going to lose. The rebellion was alive. The war for Earth had just begun.